week 9 content, and this is something that's really designed to help those students who are choosing the CV job application option for their last assignment, but also for those of you thinking about maybe applying for jobs and indeed programs in the future. So I'm going to run through some examples. I'm not sure if it's going to take the full hour because obviously normally I would engage with you guys. We normally have a lot of interactive activities, but hopefully it'll be helpful. So it matters more than ever how you go about presenting yourself. In this day and age, especially in Vietnam, we know that employment is getting more difficult. We also know that companies are using a wide range of tools to pre-screen applications. And so once where things like relationships mattered, while in countries like Vietnam, that is absolutely still the case, that relationships and connections will get you in the door. More and more with the use of these tools, we're seeing the way in which you present yourself matter in order to, I guess, clear a hurdle to get into a role. And so one of the things that you need to do as part of this is to create a CV. Now, a CV is really the way in which you present your background information about you that is going to sell your current skill set, the knowledge and skills that you have from previous experiences. Your CV should be logical in terms of its structure. It should provide a overview of your kind of professional experiences, and it should allow someone at a very quick glance to get a snapshot of you so they know whether they should continue or not with you. In general, what we would say is you should reverse order your experiences, so from the most current to the oldest. And you have to think about the visual impact of things when you present them. So you have to have clear margins, don't push things out too far. You have to think about what it's going to look like when it's sent to someone and or when it's printed off. So although it's less common now for people to print off CVs, some people may still do it. So you want to make sure that when you print it off, it still looks appropriate on the margins. You have to think about the type of font that you're going to use. And there's been some conversations, I guess, within the literature that the sans serif fonts are actually better because of our ability to be able to I guess interpret them faster and naturally. Definitely don't use fonts like Comic Sans or something like that. So think about kind of how you're presenting yourself professionally in that. In general, a reviewer of your CV is going to make a decision within the first kind of 8 to 15 seconds of scanning your application. If they're a good recruiter, they're actually going to remove your personal information, age, sex, name, like those sorts of things, in order to remove bias. But in all honesty, most organizations won't do that unless they have a specific policy. And so what you really want to ensure is that straight after that information is the most important information to, I guess, draw attention to the skill sets in the hopes of getting you over the next bar. Common pitfalls that we see in CVs is the use of the passive voice. So a project was managed by, instead saying I managed a project life cycle through X, Y, and Z. Um, instead of saying event as part of X, Y, and Z club. Was managed by me. You would say I managed the project of X, Y, and Z, right? So generally using the active voice is better than the passive voice. Don't use weak phrases. So avoid responsible for tasks. Use executed high priority tasks, right? So think about what it was. And in fact, even executed, I would say you can do better than that if you think about specifically what you did. So, for example, instead of saying responsible for finances of X, Y, and Z club, if that's what you're going to put on your CV, you could say responsible for the day-to-day accounting, uh, budgetary constraints, and um, fiscal responsibility of X, Y, and Z club, right? So you're saying the three top important things that you had to do as part of that company. Avoid visual clutter. So often one of the things we see is people try to make their CV stand out by trying to make it brighter. And sometimes, depends on the role, but sometimes that might actually detract because it makes you look unprofessional. Avoid complex tables and icons, especially if they don't really mean anything. So in this example here, you can see there's kind of this star rating system. This is a self-reflective thing and not necessarily actually telling anyone something. Along with that, what it does is maybe highlight an area that you're particularly weak in that is a reason for them to reject you. So really think about what you're putting forward. In terms of having a photo or not a photo, it really varies. Most professional CVs would not have a photo on them because most organizations would actually, at least in a Western context, request that, but it's up to you. But if you are going to have a photo on there, make sure you go and get one professionally done and make sure it actually looks like you. Don't put on a bazillion filters. Think about the words and also how you're going to get through the application or the applicant tracking system. A lot of HR systems now use these to filter out resumes and cover letters based on looking for keywords. So basically, in order to pass the bot, you need to think about kind of the headings, being exact with your nouns. And in order to do that, you need to look in your job application. So my recommendation is always that students have a generic CV and then they edit that CV for the job application. So they make sure that, you know, if the job application says must be a team player, must be able to project manage, must have, you know, skills within leadership, that when you put in your CV and you make your edit for that CV, that you highlight the situations and where you have done those things in each of your roles. The other thing that these systems often look for is action verbs, so orchestrated, spearheaded, to show kind of active ownership. So looking for action verbs in each of your bullet points that you have, remembering that you shouldn't kind of have walls of text. If you look at a CV, it would normally have the job and then 2 to 3 bullet points under each job about what you have. Quantify any results. So the example that was given when I asked AI for examples about this was, instead of grew results by 24%. So what are the achievements you had in that job, and how was it measured? And so when you're going back and looking through this CV and updating it, make sure that you're choosing action verbs, make sure you're using qualifying results that come from, or at least are informed by, that advertisement. Along with a CV, you often provide a covering letter. Now, the covering letter is really the narrative. It's the way of being able to give additional information over and above what is in your CV. It's also an opportunity to be able to show a prospective employer that you understand what they're looking for. You understand the organization's values. So if I was writing a cover letter now, I would go into the company's webpage and I would be looking at mission statements, I would be looking at company values, and I would be trying to weave some of that information into your cover letter as to why you're wanting to apply for this role. So the way a cover letter works is similar to any other kind of communication that you might do. You have a hook, so an opening that draws the reader in. Don't open with "I'm wanting to apply for." It might be, for example, you say, I identified an opportunity at X, Y, and Z company. I identified your opportunity, X, Y, and Z company, and I'm excited about the potential because blah, 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 some of the statements around values, right? You want something that shows, that sets you apart from your competitors. And one of the things that's going to set you apart from your competitors is being able to show that you understand what you're applying for. Now, we're talking about jobs here, but as someone who has reviewed a lot of applications for postgraduate programs, I would say the same thing about applying for a postgraduate program. Why are you applying for that postgraduate program? What about that postgraduate program is making you choose it over the others? Now, to be clear, most of you are going to apply for multiple postgraduate programs. I would indeed encourage you to do this. But in your cover letter, you want, or application form if they have it, you want to be able to make sure that you are being very clear about why them. Why are you choosing them? What about them? That it was an informed choice, if that makes sense. So whether this is job applications, whether this is postgraduate applications, you should be thinking about these things. In the middle, the bridge, the body of your cover letter, you want to select 2 key kind of problems or aspects that you see within the job application, and you want to show how your skill set links to this. This is an opportunity to provide more detail, not heaps and not excessive, but a little bit more than you're able to apply in your CV. So, for example, it might say, I was particularly enthusiastic about this opportunity as I saw that you were seeking someone to do X, Y, and Z. I believe that my skill sets from blah, blah, blah job align me for this because of da, 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 right? So you're giving more information than you had in your CV. Then as you close off, you close off with some kind of enthusiasm and your availability to have, to see them further, to go further in this role. So this, polite things would be things like, uh, thank you so much for your time in reviewing this. I am enthusiastic about this, or I'm excited about this potential opportunity, and I hope that I'm able to discuss this with you in the future, something along those lines. This is a slightly aside and not necessarily part of your assignment, but something that I really think that you should be doing if you haven't already. And this is going into your LinkedIn, right? So go into LinkedIn and update your profile, make sure you have a new photo on there, make sure your stuff is in there so that when someone Googles you, that's what they're going to find. The other thing I would say is if you have not Googled yourself, please do so. Please make sure that you don't have photos of yourself, drunk and throwing up somewhere. Please make sure that your Facebook and your Instagrams are locked and not able to be seen by the general public, right? You need to think about this because, once again, in this day and age, often what HR representatives will do is they'll get down to, a list that they're thinking of interviewing, and they'll just do a quick Google of all of them. And this is important because it's part of their brand. And if your brand is not going to align with theirs, then why would they go further? So think really carefully about your brand. And I use that term quite loosely, but what you're putting out into the world as representing you. Um, think about the file name, right? So generally, you would say your name, last name, CV, maybe the year, maybe the job that you're applying for, because, like I said, you generally have a master copy CV and then the one that you're actually sending in. Check that the text is searchable. And that there's no kind of complex tables that are going to screw up the ATS check. Check your contact accuracy, make sure your phone number and stuff is correct. Make sure your email is correct. Make sure any links that you have, for example, into LinkedIn, or if you have a research profile or any of those sorts of things are working. So here goes an example of a CV, right? It's minimalist. There's a balance of text and some space that's going to guide things quite effortlessly. This was given by AI. There's not necessarily that you have to do something like this, but my recommendation is that you really think about how you're going to present your information clearly. I actually personally don't like this stuff on the right hand side under the picture. Because I think that it does, unless that's quantified in some way and that you have those sort of certificates, you have these things that show this. I think that it's just bluff, right? So I think stick to the facts on your CV, and in fact, that's what we'll be looking for in your assignment. But in general, this sort of layout, I think, works, or some sort of variation. What I really like here is the use of color to draw your attention to specific titles. I haven't mentioned this, but your CV should be 1 to 2 pages long. Definitely no more than 2 pages. Cover letter. So once again, if you're, for me, if I was doing something, I often will have a header, right, for RMIT, but in most cover letters, you're not going to have a header like this, but you should still submit in a letter format, right? So making sure that things are professional, making sure your signature is tidy and clear, making sure that you're showing that you understand how to present something as a professional in business. Um, this is optional and you don't have to, but often what you'll see is you might do a follow-up. So, for example, if there's a guiding, there's someone who is named, you might send an email saying, basically, thank you so much for the opportunity, to apply. I've sent in my application and I look forward to hearing from you in the future, right? Something along those lines. The other thing that I would say is this is really important if you actually meet with someone. So for me, for example, before I applied for the RMIT role, I actually reached out to people on LinkedIn. So Mr. Lung, Dr. Minden, who's used to be our Associate Dean of Research, they both came up as being linked to the psychology program at RMIT Vietnam. And so I reached out to them, I talked to them about the program, so on and so forth. So when I put in my application, I sent them a message just saying, hi, thanks so much for giving me your time. I'm really excited about this opportunity and I've submitted my application. What this did was it meant that I was able to kind of have them in some ways advocate for me to look out for my application. And I had already given them an impression of me. Now, not all people are going to be able to do this, not all opportunities are going to be able to do this, but if you can, my recommendation would be to try and reach out and make some sort of connection with people within the company, because I think that, once again, that allows someone to put a face to the name, a personality to the name, right? And it increases your chances. So hopefully that has helped you a little bit with your assignments. If you have any questions, please make a time to talk with me, and I'm happy to go through it in details for you.